The wedding invitation arrived wrapped in ivory paper, sealed with dark green wax, as if elegance could erase betrayal. I stared at the embossed names until the letters blurred. Elena Hart and Victor Rowan. The woman who had cheated on me wanted me to watch her marry the man she'd sworn was just a friend. A handwritten note slipped from the envelope. You always said you wanted to see me happy. Come prove you meant it. My fingers tightened until the paper crumpled. Across the room, my wife looked up from the dining table. Lydia didn't ask whose wedding it was. She already knew. She invited you? She asked quietly. I nodded. Silence settled between us. Not awkward. Heavy. The kind that carried memories too painful to speak aloud. After a long moment, Lydia walked over, gently smoothed the invitation flat, and smiled. A frighteningly calm smile. Go. I frowned. You want me to go? I want you, she corrected softly, to stop hiding from ghosts. I laughed without humor. That's easy for you to say. No. Her eyes met mine. It isn't. 3 years earlier, Elena hadn't simply left me. She had dismantled my life piece by piece. She emptied our joint savings before disappearing. She convinced mutual friends that I had been controlling. She posted smiling photographs with Victor before our divorce papers were even signed. The comments had been brutal. She upgraded. Good for her. He never deserved her. I stopped defending myself after the first month. Truth never went viral. Lies always did. Then Lydia entered my life. Not dramatically. Not romantically. She rented the apartment next door. One rainy evening, she found me sitting on the hallway floor after another panic attack. She didn't ask questions. She simply sat beside me until my breathing steadied. Days later, she returned with homemade soup. Weeks later, she dragged me outside for coffee. Months later, she convinced me that surviving wasn't the same as living. She never tried to replace my past. She simply made the future seem possible. We married quietly 18 months later. No extravagant ceremony. No expensive banquet. Only a city clerk, 2 witnesses, and promises spoken without cameras. For the first time in years, I believed peace was enough. Then Elena mailed that invitation. You don't have to pretend you're unaffected, Lydia said. I'm not pretending. You haven't blinked in almost a minute. I looked away. What if she's trying to humiliate me again? Then let her try. And if everyone laughs, then you'll finally know who deserves a place in your life. She reached into the drawer beside the kitchen counter and placed my wedding ring in my palm. You stopped wearing it to work. I hesitated. I didn't want questions. She gently closed my fingers around it. Wear it. I looked at her. You aren't jealous? Lydia almost laughed. I'm married to you. There wasn't a trace of insecurity in her voice. Only certainty. That certainty made me feel ashamed for doubting her. I'll go, I said, but only for half an hour. She nodded. Half an hour? The Grand Monarch Hotel glittered beneath hundreds of crystal lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Photographers hovered like vultures waiting for famous faces. I almost turned around. Then I remembered Lydia's words. Stop hiding from ghosts. Inside, conversations buzzed beneath classical music. No one noticed me at first. Then someone whispered, Isn't that Aaron? Another voice answered, The ex-fiancé. Heads slowly turned. Curiosity spread faster than wildfire. I kept walking. Calmly. Steadily. Exactly as Lydia had told me. Elena spotted me from across the ballroom. Her smile widened. Too wide. She floated toward me in a designer gown worth more than my first year's salary. Aaron, as promised. I wasn't sure you'd come. You invited me. I honestly thought your pride would stop you. My pride survived. She tilted her head. I heard you remarried. I did. Does she know how obsessed you used to be with me? I met her eyes. She knows everything. For the first time, her smile flickered. Only for a second, but I saw it. Victor joined us carrying 2 champagne glasses. Aaron. He extended one. No hard feelings. I ignored the drink. You look happy. I am. He chuckled. I always knew Elena and I belonged together. Congratulations. My answer seemed to disappoint him. He had expected anger, bitterness, anything dramatic. Instead, I simply nodded. People nearby began losing interest. There was no scene, no shouting, no humiliation, only silence. Elena leaned closer. You've changed. So have you. Oh, you still mistake attention for love. Her expression froze. Victor's smile vanished. Before either of them could answer, the wedding coordinator called everyone toward the ceremony hall. Guests applauded. Music swelled. I checked my watch. 23 minutes. 7 more, and I could leave forever. I had no idea those 7 minutes would change every life inside the building. The ceremony hall glowed beneath warm chandeliers. White roses covered every aisle. A string quartet played softly while guests found their seats. I chose the last row, the furthest possible place from the stage, exactly where forgotten people belonged. The officiant adjusted his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before he could continue, my phone vibrated. Lydia calling. I smiled and answered immediately. You survived 23 minutes, she teased. Barely. You sound tired. I'll be home soon. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear her breathing. Then she said something that made no sense. If anything unusual happens. What? Don't come looking for me. I frowned. Lydia. Static. Then the call disconnected. I tried calling back. No answer. A knot tightened in my chest. The wedding march began. Everyone stood. Elena walked slowly down the aisle with practiced elegance, smiling at every camera. Victor looked victorious, like a man who believed he'd won the greatest prize imaginable. The officiant began speaking. Love, commitment, destiny. Words echoed through the hall. None of them sounded real. Halfway through the vows, the ballroom doors burst open. A hotel manager rushed inside, pale as paper. He whispered frantically into the coordinator's ear. Confusion rippled through the front rows. The music faltered. Then, a deafening crash exploded outside. The floor trembled. Glass shattered somewhere beyond the hall. Guests screamed. Another explosion followed. Not fire. Metal. Concrete. Something enormous collapsing. The chandeliers swayed violently. People rushed toward the exits. Security shouted conflicting orders. I was swept into the crowd before I even understood what was happening. Outside, luxury decorations lay scattered across the courtyard. Flower arches had been ripped apart. A decorative fountain overflowed after a construction vehicle smashed through it. The wedding stage built in the garden had collapsed completely. Smoke drifted across the entrance. Police cars screeched to a stop. Officers surrounded the damaged grounds. One detective barked an order. No one leaves. Victor shoved through the crowd. What the hell happened? The detective looked toward the damaged machinery. We've detained the driver. Elena grabbed Victor's arm. This has to be some kind of accident. The detective didn't answer immediately. Instead, he unfolded a small notebook taken from the driver's pocket. His face changed. Who is Aaron Cole? Dozens of heads turned toward me. I am. The detective walked over. Do you know a woman named Lydia Cole? My heartbeat stopped. She's my wife. He studied me for a long second. Then he spoke quietly enough that only those closest could hear. She surrendered herself 20 minutes ago. What? She claimed responsibility. My ears rang. No. She told us to give you a message. The detective handed me a folded sheet of paper. My hand shook before I even opened it. Only one sentence had been written. I told him my husband died years ago. The man standing here deserves to live without my sins. My vision blurred. Nothing made sense. My wife didn't do this, I whispered. The detective remained expressionless. She confessed. She's lying? Perhaps. But she refuses to say anything else. Elena stepped closer, stunned. Lydia destroyed my wedding? I didn't answer. Because I couldn't. The words on that note echoed louder than every siren surrounding us. My husband died years ago. Not today. Years ago. What did she mean? Who had she believed was dead? And what secret was she trying to bury by sacrificing herself? Somewhere beyond the flashing police lights, an ambulance door slammed shut. For one impossible second, I thought I saw Lydia sitting inside, wrist bound, looking directly at me. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply smiled. The same calm, unwavering smile she'd worn when she placed my wedding ring back into my hand that morning. Then the ambulance pulled away into the night. And for the first time since meeting her, I realized I knew almost nothing about the woman I had married. The police station smelled of stale coffee, wet uniforms, and old secrets. I sat alone in an interview room, Lydia's note folded so many times that the edges had begun to tear. The detective from the hotel entered carrying a thick folder. "My name is Detective Marcus Hale." He sat across from me without opening the file. "You've been married to Lydia Cole for 18 months? Yes. You've known her for 3 years? Yes. And you never asked about her past?" "I did." "What did she tell you?" "That some doors stayed closed for a reason." He nodded slowly. "She has repeated that sentence 6 times tonight." A heavy silence settled between us. Finally, I leaned forward. "She didn't destroy that wedding." "I didn't say she did." "You said she confessed." "I said she confessed." His expression remained unreadable. "Those aren't always the same thing." The words sent a chill through me. "What aren't you telling me?" Marcus slid a photograph across the table. It showed the construction vehicle that had crashed through the outdoor venue. The windshield was shattered. The steering column had been torn apart. No fingerprints except Lydia's. "So she drove it." He shook his head. "Not exactly." He handed me another photograph. The driver's seat had been pushed almost completely forward. "You're over 6 feet tall," he said. "Lydia is barely 5'3". Whoever drove this vehicle adjusted the seat for someone much taller. I stared at the picture. "So someone else." "That's what bothers me." He opened the folder. "Lydia walked into the station 20 minutes before the crash." I frowned. "That's impossible." "It should be." He pointed to the timestamp. "She couldn't have been at both places." The room suddenly felt colder. "Then why confess?" Marcus closed the folder. "That's what I'd like to ask her." 2 hours later, they finally allowed me to see Lydia. She sat behind reinforced glass, wearing a gray detention uniform that looked absurd on her. Her hands rested calmly on the table. She smiled the moment she saw me. "I knew you'd come." I picked up the phone on my side of the partition. "What have you done?" "Protected you." "I don't need protection." "You do." "Lydia." She lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For letting them find me first." Nothing she said answered my questions. "Did you destroy the wedding?" "Yes." "No." She blinked. "What?" "You're lying." A faint smile crossed her lips. "You always could tell." "Then tell me the truth." "I can't." "You can." "I won't." Frustration surged through me. "Why?" "Because if you know." She looked toward the surveillance camera in the corner. "They'll come for you too." My heartbeat quickened. "They?" She didn't answer. Instead, she asked quietly, "Did Elena see the note?" "Yes." "Good." "What does that mean?" "Nothing." "Lydia." Her voice remained gentle. "Do you remember the first time we met?" "Of course." "You think I found you by accident?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I was looking for you." Every muscle in my body stiffened. "What?" "For almost 8 months." The hallway outside suddenly seemed impossibly quiet. "I knew where you worked." She continued calmly. "I knew which cafe you stopped at after work. I knew which apartment building you moved into after the divorce." My mouth went dry. "You were following me?" "I was making sure you stayed alive." The word struck harder than any accusation. "Alive from what?" She smiled sadly. "You still don't remember." Before I could ask another question, the guard interrupted. "Time's up." "No." I pressed my hand against the glass. "Lydia, don't do this." She slowly raised her own hand until our palms aligned through the barrier. "There are things people bury because they're ashamed." A tear escaped the corner of her eye. "And there are things they bury because remembering would destroy the only peace they've ever found." The guard opened the door behind her. She stood. "Lydia." She stopped without turning around. "I wasn't lying in my note." "What do you mean?" She finally looked back. "My husband really did die years ago." Then she walked away. I left the station just before dawn. Rain had begun to fall. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered immediately. "Aaron Cole." "Who's this?" A deep male voice answered. "If you want your wife alive." My blood froze. "Stop asking questions." The line went dead. I called back. The number no longer existed. For several seconds, I simply stood in the rain. Then another message arrived. Not a call. A text. "She should have let you stay dead." Sleep never came. By sunrise, I had filled 3 pages with everything Lydia had ever told me about her past. The list was painfully short. No parents. No siblings. No childhood photographs. No university friends. No social media older than 4 years. At the time, I'd admired how private she was. Now it looked less like privacy and more like erasure. Someone knocked on my apartment door. I expected the police. Instead, an elderly woman stood in the hallway carrying a small cardboard box. "Are you Aaron?" "Yes. I'm Mrs. Grayson." The name sounded familiar. "Lydia rented a storage unit from my family before she moved into your building." My pulse quickened. She left instructions. The woman handed me the box. "If anything happened to her, I was to give this to you." "When did she tell you that?" "Almost 3 years ago." 3 years. Before we'd even met. She had planned for this. The box contained only 4 items. A silver key, an old photograph, a newspaper clipping, and a sealed envelope with my name written across it. I opened the photograph first. It showed a charity gala held nearly 7 years earlier. Dozens of guests smiled at the camera. Then I saw myself, much younger, standing near the back. I didn't remember attending the event. At first I assumed it was simply an old business function. Then I noticed someone else. Lydia. She wasn't beside me. She wasn't even looking at the camera. She was watching me. The date printed on the back stole my breath. 7 years ago. I hadn't known her then. At least, I didn't think I had. The newspaper clipping was even stranger. Local investor survives highway collision. The article described a late-night crash involving my car. Minor injuries. No fatalities. I frowned. I'd never been in a highway collision. At least, I couldn't remember one. A handwritten sentence had been circled beneath the article. "This was the first time I failed to save you." My hands began trembling. Failed? The final envelope contained only a key and an address. Warehouse 19. Pier District. No explanation. Just one sentence. When the lies become louder than your memories, unlock the truth. I drove to the waterfront before I could talk myself out of it. The warehouse looked abandoned. Rust covered the doors. Broken windows stared toward the gray sea. The silver key fit perfectly. The lock clicked open. Dust filled the air. Rows of covered furniture stretched into darkness. Near the center stood a single wooden desk beneath a hanging light. Someone had been here recently. The dust around the chair had been disturbed. On the desk rested a laptop. Beside it lay dozens of folders. Before I could reach them, a voice echoed through the empty warehouse. I wondered how long it would take. I turned sharply. Detective Marcus Hale stepped from the shadows. He wasn't wearing a police badge or a uniform, only a plain black coat. His expression was grim. I was hoping Lydia had time to destroy this place. He looked at the folders. But I suppose she ran out of time. "What is this?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "The beginning of a story your wife has spent 7 years trying to keep buried." He reached for the nearest folder, but a gunshot shattered the silence. The warehouse windows exploded inward. Marcus grabbed my shoulder and threw me behind the heavy desk as a second shot ripped through the hanging light, plunging half the warehouse into darkness. Outside, tires screamed across the dock. Someone had found us first. The second gunshot buried itself in the steel beam inches above my head. Concrete dust rained onto my shoulders. "Stay down," Marcus shouted. Another round tore through the warehouse, splintering the edge of the wooden desk. I instinctively crawled backward. "Who are they?" Marcus pulled a pistol from beneath his coat. "The people Lydia has been hiding you from." "You carry a gun off duty?" He glanced at me. "I'm not off duty." Before I could ask what that meant, he returned fire. The crack echoed through the cavernous warehouse. Outside, someone cursed. Then silence. Only the distant sound of waves striking the pier remained. Marcus motioned toward the rear of the warehouse. "There's an emergency exit. I'm not leaving without answers. You'll get them if we survive the next 5 minutes." He wasn't exaggerating. A black flash grenade rolled across the concrete floor. My eyes widened. Marcus lunged, kicked it back toward the broken entrance, and covered me. The explosion erupted outside instead of inside. Smoke drifted through the shattered doorway. "They're coming," Marcus barked. 3 masked figures rushed into the warehouse. The first aimed directly at me. Marcus fired once. The attacker stumbled behind a stack of crates. The second fired wildly while advancing. The third never looked at Marcus. His eyes stayed locked on me. They want him alive, someone shouted. Alive, not dead. That single word changed everything. If they wanted me dead, they would have shot me from a distance. Instead, they were trying to capture me. Marcus grabbed my arm. Now! We sprinted through the maze of abandoned equipment toward the rear exit. Bullets ricocheted off steel shells behind us. The emergency door burst open onto a narrow service road overlooking the harbor. A black SUV accelerated toward us. Marcus shoved me aside. The vehicle missed me by inches before smashing through a chain-link fence. The driver recovered quickly and swung the SUV around for another pass. Marcus fired twice. One tire exploded. The SUV spun violently before crashing into a shipping container. The masked passengers climbed out anyway. They don't quit, Marcus muttered. He led me toward a fishing dock where an old patrol boat floated beside the pier. You on a boat too? No. Then whose is it? Lydia's. I stared at him. What? He untied the rope. Get in. You know my wife far better than you're admitting. He started the engine. I do. The boat roared to life just as more gunfire erupted from the dock. Water exploded around us. Within seconds, the harbor swallowed the sounds of pursuit. Only when the shoreline had become a blur did Marcus finally lower his weapon. You deserve the truth. I deserve it a long time ago. He nodded. You're right. The boat drifted beneath an old bridge where no one could easily spot us. Marcus reached inside his coat and removed a weathered envelope. I hoped I'd never have to show you this. He handed it over. Inside was a photograph. My breath caught. It showed me standing beside a young woman. She was smiling brightly. One arm wrapped around mine. The woman wasn't Elena. It wasn't Lydia either. Who is she? Marcus answered quietly. Your younger sister. I looked up in disbelief. I don't have a sister. You did. The sentence struck like ice water. Did? Emily Cole. He watched my face carefully. She died 7 years ago. I shook my head. No, you've forgotten her. I would never forget my own sister. Marcus's expression softened. Under normal circumstances. He paused. You wouldn't. He explained what the folders in the warehouse had contained. 7 years earlier, I had been preparing to expose financial fraud inside Hartwell Development, a corporation owned by Elena's influential family. The evidence implicated executives, politicians, and organized crime. Someone learned I intended to hand the documents to federal investigators. Before I could, my car was forced off a mountain highway. Emily died protecting me. I survived. Barely. The hospital records describe severe head trauma, Marcus said. When you woke up, large portions of your memory were gone. I stared blankly at the water. No. The doctors believed the memories might eventually return. They never told me. They were instructed not to. By who? Marcus looked away. The people who wanted the evidence buried. Pieces began fitting together. The newspaper clipping. The forgotten accident. Lydia watching me years before we met. She knew. Marcus nodded. She was there. At the hospital? No. His voice became quieter. She was the paramedic who pulled you out of the wreck. Everything inside me went silent. The waves. The engine. Marcus's voice. For several seconds I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat. Lydia, I whispered. Save me. Twice. Marcus rested his elbows on his knees. The first time was on the highway. The second, when she found out someone intended to finish the job. I closed my eyes. Images flickered just beyond reach. Rain. Broken glass. Someone shouted my name. A woman's trembling hands pressing against my chest. Then darkness. I thought we met outside my apartment. Marcus gave a sad smile. So did she? What does that mean? She never wanted you to remember the accident. Why? Because remembering meant remembering who was hunting you. Marcus opened another folder he'd managed to rescue before he fled. Inside were surveillance photographs. One showed Elena entering a luxury office building late at night. Another showed Victor meeting an older man beside a private jet. The final image froze my blood. The older man was shaking hands with my late father. The picture had been taken 8 years earlier. My father died 10 years ago. Marcus nodded. Officially. The word echoed in my ears. Officially. I looked at him. What are you saying? We exhumed your father's financial records. He slid a document toward me. The man declared dead, transferred $12 million 18 months after his funeral. I stared at the signature. It matched perfectly. Impossible. That's forged. So he thought. Marcus placed another page beside it. DNA authorization. Fingerprint confirmation. Government certification. Every record declared the same thing. My father had never died. A sharp pain exploded behind my eyes. My vision blurred. For the first time in years. I remembered. Not everything. Just a fragment. A black limousine. My father gripping my shoulders. His face pale. If anything happens. His voice trembled. Forget me. Then another memory. Emily crying. No. We stay together. Gunfire. Screeching tires. The mountain road. The pain became unbearable. I collapsed onto the deck. Marcus caught me before I hit the railing. Easy. I gasped for breath. I remember. What? My father. I grabbed his sleeve. He wasn't running away. Marcus's expression changed. No. He was running from someone. Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. He listened for only 3 seconds before ending the call. His face hardened. We have a problem. What now? Lydia. My heart lurched. What happened? They're transferring her. To another prison? Marcus looked directly into my eyes. No. His next words sent a chill through every part of me. The prison transport was attacked. I stood instantly. Is she alive? We don't know. Marcus started the boat's engine again. But one witness heard the attackers shouting only one thing. What? He pushed the throttle forward. They weren't trying to kill Lydia. The engine roared. They wanted the file she refused to give them. I frowned. What file? Marcus met my eyes. The one everyone believes. He paused as the boat surged toward the shore. You still have. The patrol boat slammed against the dock before it had fully stopped. Marcus jumped ashore first. Move. I followed him toward an unmarked sedan waiting beneath the bridge. The engine was already running. A young woman in plain clothes sat behind the wheel. She glanced at Marcus. 3 minutes. Can we still intercept them? She nodded once. If the convoy stayed on Route 8. Marcus opened the passenger door. Aaron, this is Agent Nina Brooks. She looked at me through the rearview mirror. I wanted to meet you for 7 years. I wasn't interested in introductions. Where's Lydia? Hopefully still alive. The car accelerated, tires screaming against the pavement. No one spoke for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, I broke the silence. Tell me everything. Nina tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Your father, Daniel Cole, wasn't an ordinary businessman. Marcus continued. He worked undercover as a financial investigator for the government. He spent years infiltrating a network that laundered billions through legitimate corporations. Hartwell Development? I asked. Marcus nodded. And dozens of companies connected to it. My stomach tightened. So, Elena. She wasn't running the operation. Nina answered before Marcus could. But her family was deeply involved. The memories pressing against the back of my mind became heavier. I loved her. Marcus didn't sugarcoat his reply. She was assigned to get close to you. I looked at him sharply. Assigned? When your father disappeared, the organization believed he'd hidden evidence with someone he trusted. They assumed it was you. I laughed bitterly. I didn't even know he was alive. They didn't know that. The sedan turned sharply onto the highway. Police lights flashed in the distance. Burned tire marks scarred the asphalt. The prison transport had been forced off the road. 3 armored vehicles stood abandoned. Paramedics moved between injured officers. Marcus flashed his credentials. Where's the prisoner? A captain removed his helmet. Gone. Lydia? He nodded grimly. They took her. Witnesses? 1. An injured officer sat inside an ambulance with blood running down the side of his face. Marcus crouched beside him. Tell me. The officer swallowed painfully. They blocked the convoy with a fuel truck. How many attackers? 8, maybe 10. Were they after the prisoner? The officer shook his head. She surrendered before anyone reached her. I frowned. What? The officer looked at me. She walked toward them with her hands raised. She told them. His voice cracked. I'll go willingly. Leave the innocent people alone. My chest tightened. That sounded exactly like Lydia. Always protecting someone else. Even now, Marcus asked one final question. Did they say anything? The officer nodded weakly. Their leader called her. He closed his eyes, trying to remember. Guardian. Marcus and Nina exchanged a glance. Neither of them looked surprised. I noticed. You've heard that name before. Marcus stood slowly. Yes. What does it mean? He hesitated. It wasn't a nickname. It was a position. We returned to the car. The silence became unbearable. Finally, Marcus spoke. After your accident, the government believed every copy of the financial evidence had been destroyed. But one encrypted file was still missing. They created a small protection unit. To protect me? To protect whoever unknowingly carried the final key. Lydia volunteered. I stared at him. She volunteered to spend years protecting a stranger. Marcus smiled sadly. You weren't a stranger. You said she rescued me. She watched your sister die trying to save you. His voice lowered. She never forgave herself. The words echoed inside my head. She never forgave herself. Every bowl of soup, every quiet conversation, every time she'd encouraged me to move forward. None of it had been chance. She had been carrying guilt for years. Not obligation. Guilt. I suddenly remembered the night she'd found me sitting outside my apartment. She hadn't introduced herself. She'd simply sat beside me. At the time, I'd thought she understood loneliness. Now I realized she'd already known mine. Nina drove us to a secure operations center hidden beneath an ordinary office building. Steel doors sealed behind us. Inside, enormous digital screens displayed financial records, satellite images, and photographs connected by hundreds of red lines. At the center of the room stood an elderly man with silver hair. He turned as we approached. So this is Aaron. Marcus nodded. He remembers pieces. The old man sighed. Later than we'd hoped. He extended his hand. Director Samuel Grant. I ignored it. Where's Lydia? We're trying to locate her. Try harder. No one seemed offended. Samuel simply walked to one of the screens. A family tree appeared. At the top, Daniel Cole. Below him, Emily. Me. Then dozens of connected names. Hart. Rowan. Investors. Politicians. Judges. Even charity foundations. This organization survived because respectable faces hid criminal money. Samuel tapped another key. The screen changed. A wedding photograph appeared. Elena and Victor. Then another. The guest list. I recognized businessmen, media executives, several government officials. Samuel pointed to the highlighted names. Tonight's wedding wasn't merely a marriage. It was a merger. My heart sank. The venue wasn't the target. No. He enlarged another image. A private conference room inside the hotel. The ceremony distracted everyone while senior members finalized ownership transfers worth billions. I stared at the documents. So destroying the wedding. Marcus finished my sentence. Prevented the deal. Everything suddenly made sense. The construction vehicle hadn't been aimed at the ceremony itself. It had destroyed the outdoor reception area, forced an evacuation, and triggered a full police response. The confidential meeting could never take place. Lydia hadn't attacked a wedding. She had stopped a criminal transaction. Samuel handed me a recovered flash drive. This was hidden inside the warehouse. I looked at it. The missing file. He nodded. We finally decrypted it. What was inside? He smiled without satisfaction. Everything. Bank accounts. Wire transfers. Secret shareholders. Offshore companies. Recorded conversations. Bribes. Blackmail payments. Murder orders. Every major figure connected to the network, including Elena's father, Victor, several public officials, and one final name, Daniel Cole. I looked up in disbelief. My father. Samuel met my eyes. He infiltrated them. He pressed another key. A final video appeared. My father looked older than I remembered. He spoke directly into the camera. If you're watching this, Aaron, then the truth finally reached you. My hands trembled. If I failed, don't waste your life chasing revenge. Protect the innocent. Expose the guilty. Then walk away. A tear rolled down my face. For years I had believed my father abandoned us. Instead, he had sacrificed everything. Samuel quietly closed the video. The warrants have already been signed. Outside the operations center, Phones began ringing one after another. Across the country, coordinated arrests were beginning. Television screens lit up with breaking news. Executives were being detained. Corporate headquarters were being raided. Frozen bank accounts appeared by the hundreds. Elena's father was arrested while attempting to board a private jet. Victor was taken into custody outside the damaged hotel. Elena, standing before dozens of reporters, could only watch as cameras broadcast the collapse of the empire she had believed untouchable. Yet none of it brought me satisfaction. There was only one question left. Where is Lydia? Before anyone could answer, an alarm echoed through the operations center. A technician shouted across the room, "We've intercepted a transmission." Samuel turned. From whom? The technician swallowed. From Lydia. Every screen switched to a single live video feed. Lydia sat alone in a dimly lit room, her hands bound. She looked directly into the camera. Then she smiled. "I finally remembered something," she said softly. "They're listening." She took a slow breath. "So listen carefully." The screen flickered. Someone off-camera shouted. Lydia looked straight into the lens one last time. "Aaron." A gunshot echoed. The video went black. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the faint electronic hum of the black screen. "No," I whispered. Marcus reached for the keyboard. "Trace it." The technicians were already working. Signal lasted 6 seconds. Satellite relay. It bounced through 4 countries. "Can you find her?" One analyst clenched his jaw. "We've got a location." He zoomed in. An abandoned shipyard on the eastern coast. Marcus didn't hesitate. "We're going." The convoy reached the shipyard just before sunrise. Fog rolled across rusted cranes and abandoned cargo containers. The silence felt wrong. Too perfect. Marcus raised his fist. Spread out. Agents disappeared between the warehouses. I ignored every order telling me to stay behind. "Lydia." My voice echoed through the empty yard. Nothing. Only gulls circling overhead. Then I noticed a warehouse door hanging slightly open. Inside, a single light swung gently from the ceiling. The chair from the video still stood in the center. The ropes were there, freshly cut, but there was no blood. I rushed forward. "Lydia." Marcus entered seconds later. He crouched near the chair. The gunshot. He looked at the concrete floor. Wasn't fired here. What? He picked up a spent blank cartridge. They staged the execution. Relief hit, so suddenly my knees nearly gave way. She's alive. For now. Nina searched the room. Someone wanted us to believe she was dead. Marcus frowned. "No." He looked around carefully. They wanted Aaron to come here. A slow clap echoed from the shadows. We all turned. A man in his 60s stepped into the light. His tailored gray suit was immaculate despite the abandoned surroundings. His silver hair hadn't changed. Neither had his eyes. I knew those eyes, even before my memories fully returned. "Dad." Daniel Cole stopped several feet away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled sadly. "You remembered." I couldn't. Not yet. Not after everything. "You." My voice broke. "You're alive." "I am." "You let Emily die." Pain flashed across his face. "No." "You let Mom bury an empty coffin." "I couldn't go home." "You let me believe you abandoned us." "I let you hate me." His eyes filled with tears. "Because hatred would keep you alive." Marcus lowered his weapon. "You weren't supposed to come." Daniel nodded. "I know." "Then why are you here?" "Because they've taken Lydia." My heart lurched. "Where?" Daniel looked directly at me. "They know she never had the file. They finally realized." His voice became heavy. "The last copy has been inside Aaron's memory all along." Everyone stared at him. I frowned. "I don't understand." Daniel took a slow breath. "I never hid the evidence in a flash drive. I hid the encryption key." "Where?" He met my eyes. "In the only place no one would ever search." A terrible realization spread across the room. "No. The accident damaged your memory. But the encrypted sequence remained. You memorized it years ago without realizing what it was. The missing file had never mattered. The flash drive, the warehouse, the papers, they were distractions. The true key had always been me." Daniel opened a small notebook. Inside were rows of meaningless numbers. Or so they appeared. Read the first line. I've never seen this before. Read it. I did. Without hesitation. The numbers flowed from my mouth, naturally. Like lyrics to a song I'd known since childhood. Daniel closed the notebook. You see, I stared at him. How did I? You practiced them every Sunday. When you were 16, they were disguised as memory exercises. I suddenly remembered. Family game nights. Dad challenging Emily and me to memorize impossible strings of numbers. Emily always laughed. I always won. None of us had known they were pieces of an encryption key. Daniel had been preparing years in advance. An agent hurried inside. We intercepted another transmission. Everyone gathered around a portable monitor. This time Lydia appeared standing, her hands untied. Bruises marked her face, but her eyes remained calm. A masked man stood beside her. His distorted voice filled the room. Daniel Cole. Daniel stepped closer. I'm here. You have 1 hour. No police. No surveillance. Bring Aaron. If you don't. The masked man pressed a knife lightly against Lydia's shoulder. The next broadcast won't use blanks. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Marcus shook his head. It's a trap. Daniel nodded. Of course it is. We can still assault the location. No. Daniel looked at me. They don't want the file anymore. They want certainty. They'll keep killing until they know the truth dies with us. I stepped forward. Then let's finish it. Marcus grabbed my arm. You heard your father. They're expecting you. I know. They'll kill you. Maybe. I looked at the wedding ring on my hand. The one Lydia had insisted I wear. For the first time, I understood why. Not because she feared losing me. Because she wanted me to remember who I had become. Not the broken man Elena left behind. Not the frightened survivor who hid from his past. Her husband. The man she believed deserved to live. I looked at Marcus. How many people has Lydia saved over the years? He answered without hesitation. Hundreds. And how many times has she asked someone else to risk everything for her? Marcus lowered his eyes. Never. I smiled faintly. Then it's my turn. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry. For what? For asking you to carry a burden that was never yours. I shook my head. You carried it alone for too long. Outside, the first rays of morning broke through the clouds. The convoy prepared to move. Not towards safety. Toward the final meeting. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Lydia was still waiting. And this time, I wasn't going to let her face the darkness alone. The exchange point was an abandoned railway station swallowed by weeds and silence. It had once connected cities. Now it connected only ghosts. Marcus parked half a mile away. No further. Daniel checked his watch. They'll be watching. Nina handed each of us a concealed earpiece. If communications fail, Marcus finished the sentence. Trust your instincts. I removed the earpiece and placed it on the dashboard. Marcus frowned. What are you doing? They already know every move we're likely to make. I looked toward the station. I'm done letting other people decide how I live. Daniel nodded once. Without another word, we walked toward the tracks. The platform looked deserted. Then slow applause echoed beneath the rusted roof. A man wearing a dark overcoat stepped into view. He removed his mask. Victor. His expensive wedding suit had been replaced by black tactical clothing, but the arrogance in his smile remained. I always underestimated you, Aaron. You always underestimated everyone. He laughed, still calm. I learned from better people. His eyes narrowed. Where's the key? I don't have it. You do. He motioned toward the far end of the platform. Lydia emerged between two armed men. Her hands were free. Her face was bruised, but she stood perfectly straight. The moment our eyes met, the world became quiet. She smiled, not because she wasn't afraid, because she trusted me. Aaron, I'm here. You shouldn't have come. I know. A faint laugh escaped her. You never listen. Victor grew impatient. Enough. He pulled a pistol and pointed it at Lydia. The key. Daniel stepped forward. It ends with me. Victor shook his head. No. It ends with your son. He looked directly at me. You know what's funny? For years we hunted files, drives, servers, bank vaults, and the answer was walking around wearing a wedding ring. He almost sounded impressed. You should have stayed broken after Elena left. I looked at him steadily. If she hadn't betrayed me, I reached for Lydia's gaze again. I never would have met my wife. For the first time all morning, Victor's confidence cracked. He expected hatred, regret. Instead, I felt gratitude, not for the betrayal itself, but because I refused to let it define the rest of my life. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance. Before anyone could move, Lydia spoke. Aaron. Her voice was calm. Do you remember what you told me the night we got married? I searched my memory. Then it came back. The small courthouse. The cheap gold rings. The rain outside. I'd held both her hands and whispered, whatever happens tomorrow, we don't survive by becoming people we hate. Lydia smiled. Then don't. The words were meant for me. But Daniel heard them too. So did Marcus. So did everyone standing on that forgotten platform. No one fired first. No one surrendered. The silence stretched until Victor finally lost patience. He shoved Lydia aside and raised his pistol. The shot never came. A sharp crack echoed across the station. Victor's weapon flew from his hand. Marcus, hidden somewhere beyond the tracks. Victor's guards opened fire. Chaos erupted. Daniel tackled one attacker. Nina disarmed another. I sprinted toward Lydia as bullets struck the old concrete pillars around us. One guard grabbed her arm. She drove her elbow into his throat with surprising force. He staggered. I reached them, pulled Lydia behind me, and together we ducked beneath the platform as gunfire thundered overhead. You okay? She laughed breathlessly. I've been better. I thought. She touched my face. I know. I'm sorry. For what? For believing I had to protect you alone. She rested her forehead against mine. You came. I always would. The firefight ended almost as quickly as it had begun. Sirens surrounded the station from every direction. Victor, realizing escape was impossible, fled toward the tracks. Daniel chased him. I started after them. Lydia caught my wrist. No, I have to. You don't. Her grip tightened. This isn't your revenge. She was right. For the first time since everything began, I stopped running toward the past. Together we watched from a distance. Victor reached the end of the bridge, spanning the railway. Police blocked one side. Marcus blocked the other. Daniel stood in the middle. No more lies, Daniel said. Victor laughed bitterly. You think you've won? No. Daniel shook his head. I think it's over. Victor looked around desperately. There was nowhere left to go. No hidden allies. No escape vehicle. No fortune waiting offshore. Every account had been frozen. Every powerful friend had been arrested. The empire he'd trusted had collapsed overnight. He took one step backward. Another. The loose gravel shifted beneath his feet. He reached for the railing, missed, and disappeared into the dry ravine below. No one moved. No one celebrated. The silence itself became the verdict. Consequences had delivered the ending that revenge never could. Months later, the city looked different. Not because the buildings had changed. Because I had. The trials dominated every news channel. Executives were convicted. Officials resigned. Families finally learned the truth about loved ones who had disappeared years earlier. Daniel testified publicly before entering a witness protection program. Before leaving, he hugged me for the first time since I was a teenager. I don't expect forgiveness. I smiled. Good. He looked surprised. I expect you to earn it. For the first time in years. He smiled too. Emily's grave finally received the headstone she deserved. Not one built on lies. Lydia stood beside me holding white lilies. I'm sorry I couldn't save her, she whispered. I took her hand. You saved the person Emily wanted most. She looked at me through tears. We stood there until sunset, not speaking. We didn't need to. Some grief isn't solved. It's shared. A year later, Lydia and I opened a small community counseling center for victims of financial fraud and emotional abuse. No cameras, no grand opening, just quiet work. People walked through our doors carrying shame that wasn't theirs. We helped them put it down. Sometimes healing looked dramatic. Most of the time, it looked like someone taking their first full breath after years of fear. One evening, as we locked the front door, Lydia slipped her hand into mine. Any regrets? I looked at the fading sunlight across the street. I thought about Elena's invitation, the ruined wedding, the lies, the memories I had lost, the people I had found. Then I looked at the woman beside me. My cheating ex invited me to her wedding. Lydia laughed softly. That's a strange way to begin an answer. It is. I kissed her forehead. But without that invitation, I smiled. I might never have discovered that the best part of my life wasn't the one that was taken from me. It was the one we chose to build together. She squeezed my hand. We walked home without looking back. The past remained where it belonged, behind us.